And then there's the third sex, which we haven't fully explored.
The androgynous.
Yeah, the androgynous.
Yeah, okay. India is a very civilized country, okay? They have too many quotas. They're too kind to minorities. It messes up the Indians, but at least they're well-meaning. It's a very matriarchal society. But they have 3 genders in their passports. It says male, female, third.
Mm-hmm.
Why are Americans uptight about that? What's so
Yeah.
difficult with that? Why can't you be generous enough to allow a little third category there?
Mm-hmm.
Because the vast majority of people are men and women, are perfectly happy to be men and women, and they're not on a spectrum. Jordan is right about that. 95% of the population are men or women, not on a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a category that Jordan misses out on, and that's the third sex, and they are on the spectrum, and they're androgynous.
Yeah.
And they're androgynous because in any large-scale flock animal,
Yeah.
it's useful to have go-betweens.
Go-betweens, yeah.
Between the men and the women. That's what gay men and lesbians are. And I want to reformulate the whole LGBT agenda and put some real pride into it by simply making the LGBT people say to the rest of the population, no, it's not about you being tolerant towards us and accepting the fact that we're freaks. No, you need us.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You need us. I mean, I'm not Camille Paglia is totally with me on this one. And she was a pioneer in this work. And Petra Östergren, the Swedish feminist, and some people in Scandinavia have been vocal on this too. And I'm certainly vocal these days. And
the monks were a third gender at one point, right? Anybody who was not in a heterosexual relationship was sort of another kind of person, right?
Well, there wasn't even heterosexuality and homosexuality. They came up with that stupid idea. It's just behaviors. Why would your behavior determine your identity?
Mm-hmm.
That was a pathology invented by a Hungarian doctor in the 1870s to lock people up in psychiatric institutions because he didn't have enough patients. He's as evil as Facebook is today. Why did we build the whole damn movement on the concept of homosexuality and then also introduce heterosexuality and lock people into boxes according to their behavior?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make any sense. The vast majority of languages in the world do not have a word for homosexuality because they don't get the concept to begin with. It's so weird. Mm-hmm. That's healthy to me. If you're a man turned on sexually by men, it's probably because you identify with women and you have some kind of secondary archetype that's connected with women. All the gay men I meet listen to Madonna and Lady Gaga records, and they're hairdressers and the go-betweens. And all the way I describe it is this. Imagine you're sitting on a flight and you're being served, and a straight guy serving you and a gay guy serving you. What's the difference? It's called service. Straight guys throw food at you. The gay guys comes up to you and said, can we do anything to make your journey more pleasurable? Gay guys, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so the real LGBT pride starts with recognizing that sexual orientation is a really crappy form of identity. This is all about transsexuality.
Uh-huh.
This is all about androgyny. It should have been about
instead of categories
all the time. Yes.
Instead of categories, instead of endless categories, we just have transsexual. We just have the
have a third one and say these are the
in-between categories.
Men and women that the men and women unfortunately need. Period. Mm-hmm. Problem solved. And we can all fuck whatever we like. It doesn't turn us into anything. The only thing that happens if you've had a certain kind of sex is that you have one more memory of what that would be like, and that's just another box you should tick before you die. To be honest about it. Not something you should be afraid of because it isn't you. Well, you don't become what you do. You already are what you are in your mind and in your body. It's already there. It's called social biological programming. It's called archetype. Explore that, build on that, find the modern version of it, and you'll be happy. But you will never, ever become your behavior. The behavior can be accidental. It can be anything. It can be permanent. It can be temporary. So what? We were a lot happier when we could move around and be anything rather than being locked into boxes that really are kind of pathologies.
But could we really be anything in the past? I mean, didn't we have even more fixed roles in a tribe and all that? No. That's wrong. Oh, okay.
Okay, I've lived in Istanbul for many years, and Turkish guys don't get the idea of homosexuality because they're just like, well, we all do that until we can marry and have kids and fuck a girl. So since all guys have sex with other guys, what's the thing here? We don't get it. There's no word for it in Turkish language. It doesn't make sense. The word gay simply means trans. oh, it's kind of Western form of transgender.
Mm-hmm.
They think of Lady Gaga records on the dance floor. They don't understand it has anything to do with sex, which makes a lot more sense. Because gay culture is gay culture. It's basically men mimicking women.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, it's nothing to do with sex at all.
It's men mimicking women. It's not how men have sex. Mm-hmm.
No. And that's when gay guys who take their straight friends with them to gay disco, the straight guys go, yeah, it's kind of fun with the balloons and the glitter, but I actually hate Lady Gaga records. Can I go somewhere and hear a metal record? And then the gay guy goes, no, because I don't like metal. Yeah, because you're different. That's the difference in gay and straight. It's nothing to do with who you fuck. It has to do with who you identify with, not with what you do. And what you identify with is your archetype, which you should identify with. We need the gay guys as go-betweens to the women, and the women need the lesbians among us as go-betweens to the men. Beautiful, they exist in every culture. They make up another 4 or 5% of the population. And then you got the shamanic caste on top of that. And then you got about the 10% of the weirdos.
Well, is there a crossover between the trans people and the shamanic?
Yeah. I would say that within the shamanic, yeah, exactly. Within the shamanic caste, almost 50% are also androgynous. But there's also 50% who are not.
Okay.
So again, archetypes reflecting the outside world. Only a man who moves into celibacy as a monk can understand what you sacrifice as a man if you don't sleep with women. You have to be oriented sexually towards women, heterosexual, to understand that. A gay guy who becomes a priest or a monk can never understand straight men. But he's a great go-between between men and women, but he can never understand fully any of them.
Not sure I get that. I'm going to have to digest that.
Well, it explains why these populations are the same everywhere. What fascinated me when I did travel anthropology was that the number of people you would consider gay or trans and the number of people who were shamanic caste was the same in every population I studied everywhere in the world. The same everywhere. No different.
So all the archetypes are there, right? It's just we become pathologized by ideology.
Yeah.
Bad ideology.
No, I mean, I am firmly based on science here. I am right. I've got the data. It's just tribal anthropology is going to sweep the floor when it comes to understanding human beings, meaning that most of current psychology will go out the window because it has to be redone. We can call it deep psychology. It has to be redone from outer senses, inner senses, a much more profound way of understanding our work. And we're certainly not blank slates. Rousseau has never been more wrong. Locke has never been more wrong.
Oh, yeah.
We are not blank slates. We're born with an army of senses and personality traits and archetype traits that we should cherish and nourish and develop.
Yeah, and understand and
Yes. Takes a whole new form of psychology to do that. But I'm starting with the anthropology, and then I'll let the psychologists redo their work from these theories based on them. The blank slate idea has to go out the window quickly. The social justice war, you mean, is just terribly destructive. The combination of postmodernism and blank slate ideology is just terrible. It's not even consistent with itself. It's just narcissistic, self-victimization cultures, victim cultures. It's just terrible, terrible, destructive, consuming resources like mad. People should read Thomas Sowell and his excruciating, painful
my friend was telling
journey through Afro-American culture in the 20th century and how everything went until the 1960s and everything's gone the wrong way ever since. Sowell must be heard. He's brilliant. He is the real phallic gaze to the Afro-American community. He tells them where they must go next and get it right the next time. Legalizing drugs is the beginning. Get all the fathers out of prison and get them back into their families. That's number one. The war on drugs is the nasty form of American.
There's like the war on drugs and there's the war on fathers. Those two.
Yeah, well, they're combined.
Yeah.
It's just completely unscientific and stupid. Now, America's obsessed with all the wrong things, and it has to do with Cartesian individualism And the idea that we're all fully taught when we're 23. And you know, I'm going to be merciless with the teenager mythology that started in America in the 1950s. But the West was essentially emptied of 70 million young men who disappeared. And nobody listened to the older men any longer. So we're full of young people, and a lot of women came to the forefront. And no problem with the women, except they didn't know what they were doing when they took over. So from the 1950s forward, we started celebrating youth. We sexualized society on a massive scale. That's exactly why other cultures find the West so like, you know, what do you call it in English? It's like really distasteful, right?
Yeah.
Not incomprehensible. What do you say? Yeah.
Sexualizing young people, it would be incomprehensible
to
any
young
traditional
body, made
or other
it the
kind of
norm.
society.
Sexualized everything, forced men and women to be together 24/7. And this society we create in the West is not sustainable at all. It's over-sexualized. And it creates enormous stress. And we get bipolarity epidemics among men. We get burnout epidemics among women.
Do you think, you just mentioned a possible reason for that, and you said that maybe it's because men spend too much, we spend too much time with our other sex, right?
Well, so do the women. Women are forced to work in workplaces where men are around all the time. These men are 10 years older than they are, more successful than they've ever been.
Is there any way, like, I think we need to polarize again in some sense, like we need to...
At least we have to start a discussion on how we created a society with constant sexual stress. And that sexual stress is also tied to an idealization of the infantile.
Yeah.
Meaning we're both being trained to be children and greedy, at the same time we're trained to be sexual objects. Men are sexual objects on a par with women. First, we made the women sexual objects, and the response that was to make the men sexual objects too. But sexuality, constant sexuality, is supposed to be only during ritual time. Now, constant 24/7 in society means that we're under constant stress. It's a sexual stress. It makes people terribly unhappy, unless they're at the top of it and reap the benefits of it. But then they get existentially empty, because then they just chase sex all the time and change their sexual partners. And one day they wake up and say, this is just abuse. This is just addiction. This is no depth. This is not learning to know yourself. This is not getting any deeper. And the way I see today is that I love women sexually, but I live with another man. The reason I do that is because it's easier for me to relate emotionally deep with another man who's my brother, and I work with him, and we travel and we live together, and we sleep in the same bed when our female lovers are not over. It's more sustainable. It works better than a man-woman relationship would in Scandinavia in 2019. Far better.
Interesting.
We need to invent new ways of living that actually are sustainable. And I think the number one rule is to start. Why don't you start with people you do not sexualize? I know it takes a lot of training to think you're not going to sleep next to people you want to fuck all the time. But if you sleep next to people you actually trust and that means something to you, that you would take the bullet for even, that's the original family. That's the tribal family.
Yeah, people used to, I see pictures of Eskimos and the whole family sleeps together, right?
That's why they don't care if you fuck their wife and you come over, because they don't care. None of the tribal families do. Because if you want to have sex now, you can't wait till the ritual. Okay, you're a bit torn, then have the sex now. Because the ritual, we have the sex. Sex is ritualistic. The orgy is the original sexual encounter. The ritual. At certain dates, at certain times, we fucked, and we fucked really hard and a lot. And the girls got pregnant. And we knew after the ritual, 9 months later, we better be in a good place. But get going over to that good place, because 9 months from now, our daughters of this tribe are going to give birth to our children. And without those children, we're cooked.
So that would mean spending some time away from the women and hunting and all that.
Once you separate men and women, they get more sexually attracted to each other without the stress. Maybe that speaks something about how we should live. Just food for thought. A lot less couple therapists around, but I don't mind if they lose their jobs. Because they never leave the 24/7 marriage situation, do they? No, they don't. No, if you just listen more to each other, you love each other. No. If you stay away from each other, you love each other more. You're supposed to be on two different sides of the river. You're not supposed to be together 24/7. We never were in any culture. until the West in the 1960s. No, I don't think that's a very sound way of living. And that's why it fails.
But is there any going back? I mean,
yeah, but going back, it's not going back. It's the return to scribal and the return to tribal means you go deeper to understand what it means to be human in a deeper way. You also then understand what machines can and cannot do and must not do. Okay, once you do those studies, then you go back and look at us and where we're at right now. And you understand why we have the problems we have. Now, if you live in a society where a guy and a girl living together, and you know that living together, and you meet them at the cocktail party, and you know you're going to talk about the problems in the relationship within a minute. Because that is 99% of conversations about man-woman relationships today. It's constant therapy. Okay, maybe you should just try a different lifestyle.
Try a different lifestyle, but the reason they don't, right, is because they're afraid of being alone.
No, they don't have another model. They haven't gone deep.
And they don't have another model.
They haven't studied. They haven't understood what it means to be human. They haven't even been interested in their own psyche. They haven't even been interested in themselves and how they function. Because if you do, you learn, you sacrifice certain things to get a bigger reward tomorrow. Meaning, instead of sleeping next to the person you want to fuck, you sleep next to the person who means something to you. And if you do that, you build a relationship that lasts way, way longer. And maybe Jordan Peterson does that with his wife in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was about to say, you sleep beside the person you means something to you and who you.
Yeah, but then you should say that instead of saying wife and husband. Because when a 23-year-old guy hears him talk about his wife, it's just like, oh, that's not selling me on a Friday night in a bar. That's not selling me on Tinder. That's not selling me among any women.
So it's bottling up the libido too much in a sense.
Yeah, that too. Listen, I love talking to you. I want to do it again and again and again. We are the new theologists. Theologists are listening to us. They're interested in what we have to say. Definitely.